It's easy to get lost. This is The Revenue Maze, and I'm Valerie Cobb. Join me as we navigate the halls, dead ends, and U-turns on your path towards upward growth trajectory. The Revenue Maze is sponsored by Revenue North Star, guidance and execution through fractional revenue leadership, uncovering hidden revenues, and empowering small business growth through process-driven sales customized to your company environment. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Revenue Maze. I'm so glad that you are listening in, and we have a fantastic guest today. I am super excited about her. She is highly skilled at management. She is also a co-founder of Orphans Future Alliance. We'll kind of get into some of that too. She has led international Fortune 500 companies, teams at those companies, and she is CEO and founder at EmBeba. Thai-Anh Hoang, welcome.
Thank you so much. The introduction makes me feel so wow about myself.
Well, it should. You're doing great things. And before anybody, she does have a cold today, and I feel a little bit sad for her, and then a little bit, I'm just so glad she made it on the show. So I'm kind of mixed emotions.
Yeah, so sorry. I'm gonna have to pre-apologize if I end up sniffling through the whole thing. But I wanted to get on this, and I love talking about journey, and really try to give a very humanized perspective of what it means to run a company, just life perspective. I love these type of things.
Well, cool.
So thank you. It's an honor for me to be on.
Well, the listeners are excited to learn more about you, but before we actually get into that, we always start the show with the same thesis. What is one thing that you can tell the listeners and viewers that will help them get out of the revenue maze?
I think it is, we've been back and forth about this a lot, but I think if I have to sum it up, is just take a chance. One of the key things in life is you must take a chance.
Okay.
Well, and it's also risk.
There's also risk. So, all right. There's these great ideas running around there, and a lot of people don't take chances because of the risk. So give us a couple of pointers on how you've dealt with the risk. Because if you're saying take a chance, you're saying that for a reason, right? If we don't even start, then we can't, there is no reward, so.
It was interesting. I was teaching a class at Northeastern University, asked me to come in to help the future generation of women entrepreneurs. And so they had just really amazing high school students from around the world into their program. And they asked me to teach this course on it. And one of the things I said in my, in the class was that EmBeba was just not the only ideas I've ever had. Since I was growing up, I've always had all these ideas, and I'm sure everyone have ideas, and they're like, what is this and that? But then they never act on the idea, because the acting part is the hard part of doing something, right? Yeah. And everyone thinks that you just have one idea and that's it. That's the most brilliant ideas you have itself. So I was showing these girls that EmBeba is my third idea. So, and as well. And so I had idea for couponing app before couponing app was the thing. I even went through the entire journey of trying to get it, but then I realized I don't have a technical expertise to it. So then you couldn't, but it's just even to get there, you have to take a chance of actually diving into and not just talk about it. So I talk about I wanted to do a wedding, customized wedding dress and all these things, but a lot of these ideas are so complicated. And technically, you need someone who knows, technology, coding and stuff. And that was just something I could not get myself to. I couldn't figure it out. Of course, lots of other brilliant people have figured it out and made lots and lots of money out of it. But just taking that chance of actually diving into and not just going, I have this idea, is really important. And some of it will succeed, and the 3 to 4 that I've gone through just did not even get off the ground because of I just didn't think I was the one to do it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that you bring up a great point of even starting, because it's really hard. Uh, there's a lot of naysaying in the globe right now, right? You can't do it. You can't make this happen. This has already been done, right? Or we've always done it this way, right? And all of a sudden you have this bright idea, and then people get nervous to explore it. Like, there's a lot that goes around. I would say inventing period is, well, the masses might not like it. So emotionally, you've got to be able to get ready for people not liking
a lot of rejection.
Rejection, right?
Yes.
And I think that that's part of the reason people don't start, is they don't feel it's a safe enough environment, you know? Have you
Absolutely.
experienced that?
Oh my
Experienced that?
God, the entire time. Like when I started this, everyone's like, what? You're going to start a sensitive skincare company for children, and you're going to work, you know, to help children with eczema. It's like, what are you doing that is P&G and Johnson Johnson hasn't done? And all these things. So like, yes, you have tech thing, but you have absolutely no background in skincare, in product development. How are you going to do it? And no one took me seriously. I like, even to the point when and you just gotta like, and for me, it's actually my personality of like, if you're gonna count me out, I'm totally gonna, it's like super motivated to do the I told you so. And that's just my personality. I'm always like that. And so that actually helped me get past. I'm like, I'm gonna prove it to you. So, you know, I've done things even to the point where I got the prototype and everything, and I would ask friends and family, like, can you try it? Like, nobody trusted my product because they're like, oh, I don't know, you know, this. I'm like, I have a third party lab. I have dermatologists and pediatrician testing these things. I can show you paperwork. It's not like I'm sitting here in my kitchen, you know, I'm not that type of an entrepreneur. You're sitting there in the kitchen, God bless them, but I'm not. And it's mostly because I work with such severe skin condition for the things. I could still not get them to work. Even to the point where like my product is live, I'm on like best products for the year at Print Magazine, all these things, still couldn't get my product to work. And then suddenly they're like, I don't know what happened, but like suddenly they're like, I'm so desperate, I'm gonna give your product a try, kind of moment. And they're like, oh my God, it worked. Yeah, it just took you 3 years to get there.
Yeah.
But so and I always tell people, the people who are going to be supportive of you, you'll be very surprised. It isn't going to be your friends. It isn't going to think, because innately they want to do it too, but they can't. I feel like this it's very interesting dynamic. Once you become a entrepreneur, they love the idea of you being an entrepreneur and all these things, but they don't really like think you're going to succeed. And then when you do succeed, then it's a kind of weird dynamic that happens, and it's really strange. But you get to know who your friends are, and and the one that really supported me, or actually other female founders. I found a cohort of female founders who are really supportive of each other, and so I think that's also very helpful. Of like, how do you move forward when everyone says no? Is that you have to have your own like cheerleading squad who's like, you can totally do it, because you're like you are your worst critic. Everyone tells me that because I'm so hard on myself all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I was talking to someone yesterday, even, and I don't really get into male, female, a lot, but, she pulled out a statistic, and I actually heard it was even higher than this, but she said, well, 60, if a male, if in the job market, they will apply for a job, even if they feel like they only have 65% of the qualifications. But females have to have it, 85, 90% before they will apply for a job. Right. And
that's definitely true.
And so a lot of times we will limit that. So you need that cheerleading squad that says, you can do it. It's that little angel on your shoulder, right?
It's also our women are just naturally risk averse to begin with. And that happens to everything. Like, as part of, I'm very proud of the fact that I was one of the rare one who was able to raise over $1 million in funding from investors for a first-time investor. First time, it's actually super hard for a first founder without name cloud and all the crazy. Like you have to go from like a Stanford. You're like, oh, you just have to have the word Stanford, or like you're from away, whatever, you'll be fine. But if you're not, then it's very, very difficult. So I was able to do that. But I would say that men versus women, it's very difficult. Like the going in front of all the investors, they ask you all these questions like, how are you not losing my money? I'm like, I don't see you asking like, you know, the Uber guy or like Peloton, who like just had $1.2 billion losses. You know, like I don't see you asking those guys how you're not losing money, but why are you asking me how am I not going to lose your money? So, but then it's like that risk averse, like women, you almost have to be very alpha. And luckily for me, my personality is super alpha. I'm like, it's probably because I'm such a tomboy growing up. So it helps. So I'm like super alpha, where like at work as well. So that helps. But I feel like a lot of women are taken aback by it, even for me too. On the question again, it's all these biases, and guys are just the ability to BS is just astonishing, astonishing. And they can do it so well. Like if I have to start BSing, and people always tell me like, you gotta like stretch this truth a little bit. I start to twitch. Like I start to feel very uncomfortable and all these things. It just doesn't come out natural, you know. But the guys, their ability to like just stretch the truth a little bit to get there. It's like, and I think that's what women, just in general, and people have to adopt. Is like win. And in order to win, what does it like? Don't win at all costs, but like win as much as you can, and like figure out how to get there. And if you have to be like the most arrogant person, I guess you could, but I'm more of the homey type. I like to do things a little bit different. It helps, but it definitely, I think women really do have quite a big hurdles to climb. Part of it is our personality. Part of it is we're very meek. We don't speak up. That happened to me in my own workplace before. Also very risk averse, not willing to take risks. That's why I said taking the leap is a big deal. Like, for example, in my career, almost every single role I've gone into is never the role that I've actually applied for. I actually never applied for any role. They just keep asking me to do roles, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Like they asked me like, do you want to go into you know, internationally to do operations and client service? I'm like, okay, I have a finance background. I'll figure it out. I think most of it is just figure it out. So take that leap. I'm like, what else can you do? You fail, let's fail. You know, but take that leap. Otherwise, you'll never know. I think that's the biggest thing, is that if you don't take a leap, a chance, you just never know what you're capable of. And so I really believe in doing that.
You know, you bring up a really, really good point on just even human behavior. I think I was listening to a TED talk, and you know, the big phrase right now is imposter syndrome, right? And imposter syndrome for women seems to be, I don't know if there's a stat out there, but you know, it's the whole thing.
High.
It's very, very high. It's, I don't have that skill yet, therefore I can't do it. Therefore, I've got to figure out how to get a skill, but I will let you know when I've got that skill, and then you can hire me, right? Because it's like, versus
it is very much like that, because we want to be, we don't take 50-50 shots. We're like, we got to be like 80 in order for us to go and do a move to do something. And most guys is like 20. They're like 20, I'll just do it. You know,
I'll just do it.
I'll just do it. And imposter syndrome is so real for women, particularly women CEOs and founders and folks with really, because I mean, so I think Serena Williams actually said that too, like in the new podcast with Meghan Markle about imposter syndrome, and how she didn't think she deserved to be how amazing she is, you know, accomplishment because of all these things. And I think that is really true. You know, every single time for my own professional relationships and like all these accolades I've received, I'm like, are you really sure? Like when like I'm like, you know, when I was named Boston 40 under 40 last year, I'm like, did they just rent out everyone on the list? It's like always was like, how the hell did I get that list? And like, or like when like P&G like named EmBeba one of their next three out of the 70 something company that they did, they reviewed, and they thought the 3 out of next in STEM challenges for consumer goods. And I'm going, again, it's like, huh? How did that happen?
How did that happen?
It's like, I'm not like, and it was interesting because we're the only company that actually is not our innovation is truly different and unique in a way of behavior, user experience and stuff. It's not the botanicals and stuff that makes up the formulation itself. And while the other two companies are truly like built like very pharmaceutical like, so it's just a completely. So when we were named next in STEM challenge, we're like, I was like, I just don't, like, you don't know why they picked you. Obviously they picked you for a reason, but for you, for me and a lot of my colleagues, they were just like, I don't know. And as you get more and more recognized, you actually start to feel worse because you're going, because you're like, I don't know what's going on. I don't think I deserve it, because we always equate getting recognition with doing something extremely amazing. But the way what we think of the goal of doing something extremely amazing, I feel like we're never going to reach it, because the goal is now keeps moving for us. Versus the guy was like, yeah, that's a thing. And, like, I think imposter syndrome actually makes you have like a lot of deep anxiety of like, and women go through this. I talked to this quite a bit with the women entrepreneurship that I coach as well. And they're always asking like, I get deep anxiety of things. And I was like, I get imposter syndrome all the time. It's just, you hide it well in public, and then in private, you're like, oh my God, I don't know. They're going to find out I'm a fraud, among other things.
Yeah. It's that whole inside. I remember I was singing at an event, and afterwards people asked me for my autograph, and I'm like, are you talking to me? And it's like, you don't even want to talk to anybody, because you kind of walk off the stage, people have clapped, you do whatever you're doing, the audience is doing that, and then you accidentally run into one of them, and then they're like, hey, can we get your autograph? And I'm like,
I think we just don't do it as well. I mean, we're not, I mean, look at the WeWork founder, right? He just like, WeWork imploded, but hey, he built another company, got a check for $300 million, no problem.
No problem.
No problem. Like, you could just go out and do it. Versus, if it was a woman and things imploded, we just go hide, because we're like, I can't show my face ever again because of one failure. So that's just like a really good illustration of the difference between women, how we view risk and rewards and failure compared to a guy.
Yeah, in comparison to a guy, I've led so many sales teams and coached them, and I will say I call it self-loathing behavior or limiting beliefs, right? And believe it or not, it is a huge problem it's gender neutral among anybody who's in sales, right? If you have to actually get them past their own trip up. So when I call their own trip up, it's like, I'm a buyer and I always look at a discount. And so therefore all my customers will be looking for discounts, or I am a buyer and I always buy only the top-notch thing. I don't care what it costs. And therefore, if customer service isn't creating that value, then I can't sell this product, so you get this self-limit, and it's like, it's even when we boil it down to even perfectionism, it's almost like some sales team members will get to the point where the product has to be so perfect that they can sell it on the other side, because it is their perception of how they approach the market. You know, if I go out, I do this. If I go this way, therefore everybody else is the same way, you know, and it's like, no,
it's an inherent bias. Yeah.
Yeah. And in that one I have found has been completely gender neutral, you know,
that is true.
You know, and it's surprising how sometimes we talk about men hiding it, you know, or whatever, but sometimes when I've run in and coached men, they have the same feelings, but they go out and they hide it a lot.
They just do it very well.
Yeah, they hide it very, very well, or they don't, because they, back to your original thesis, right? Take a chance. How many men are out there that have not taken a chance, and we just don't, because they're not on the radar? But it is statistically more driven by females feeling that way. But men hide their feelings so much too. So but
it's also, I think, the way they're raised, the way that men are raised to play. If you think about it, right, we're very risk averse, where women are risk averse. Guys are taught to play like football and get killed, like and everything. And it's like, I never understand the concept of football, to be honest. I was like, that just sounds brutal. And like all these things that, like, you know, raised to be very a risk taker, like doing all these things. And being able to be a risk taker is always being able to just have this can-do mentality. Let me try it. Women just aren't. I think maybe it's also going back to how we are raised. We're raised to be not risk takers.
And it may be, you said that, I think you said you were kind of, didn't you just say you're kind of a tomboy? You were raised.
Yeah, I was raised with all boys. So it's a little different. So my personality is very much like a boy.
Yeah, I have the same. And so sometimes I sit in this really like weird valley where because I have 5 brothers, those sometimes women don't get me, and sometimes men don't get me, right? I get like this weird.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I do too, because I'm just like, my personality is so like alpha. So when I go in, the dynamic is really, really interesting, and then you kind of like not sure where you actually fit in.
Yeah.
And that was actually more so in my younger days, because it's like people just didn't know what to make of you when you're like such a ball buster, and you're just like loud. Well, not loud, but like very forceful. And I'm very tiny, by the way. I'm like barely 5 feet. So when you see like this person coming in and they're like, you know, it's just like a tour de force, and you're like, but it's just that I grew up with guys, so it's just I just like one of the buddies. So you kind of like, it's just so different. It really does have to come. It does come from growing up that way.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to teach my child to be very independent, also very risk taker. Just a caveat. I grew up with a mom who is a business person, who's a straight up entrepreneurs and stuff. So a lot of my entrepreneurial like desires and things, and how I see to be so independent, came from seeing my mom, the way she worked and things like that. And that's just instilled into me the hard work, and like, you need to, if you want something, you got to go get it, and things like that.
Well, you are definitely a go get it. You are a force to reckon with. That is for sure. You can definitely feel that presence when you're talking. And so I'm curious a little bit. You've talked a little bit about how you've been raised, that's brought you to this point in your life and everything, but I haven't heard. I would like to know why you started EmBeba. I'm just curious. What prompted you to do this? I mean, for children especially. So you're targeting very specifically a group, right? So yeah.
So it really started from my own need. And I think a lot of women entrepreneurs actually do this. It's actually from our own needs as well. So I have severely sensitized skin, hypersensitivity, and unfortunately I passed it on to my 2 children, but particularly my youngest right now. And they have really bad like eczema and like all sorts of rashes, things like that. I just, nothing was really working, but I really wanted to, I've always been a healthy person. And I always wanted to have a more healthy approach to managing skincare. And what I didn't like was that the first thing that a doctor would tell you, or just anyone, is like, steroid. Have you put steroid on the kid? I'm like, you can't put
Yeah.
steroid on the kid 24/7. Okay, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It actually impacts things. And then, have you tried all these medication? I said yes, but I think if you just think of it from a holistic, clean health living, I think it's very manageable. I'm from Vietnam, and we always consider like a balance between healthy living, healthy eating, clean living, to and using medication as needed, which is kind of completely different from the West, which is like anytime problem, just go to CVS, take a pill. So it's like
Yeah.
it's just a mentality. So I wanted to, and what I saw was that I would like try to put all these type of like products on my child, particularly like the medication will work, and then once you get off it, it wouldn't work. Or I would use like in all the different like things that you see in the store, it just
Uh-huh.
contained too much petroleum. There wasn't really anything in there that
Sure.
really would help. And I wanted something that was really natural and clean. And I'm not the type to tell you don't use, just use natural product, because that's crazy
Yeah.
as well. But I want, so that was the problem. And then the secondary thing was that I couldn't get my child to use that thing. You spend all this
Oh,
effort trying to find the product, and then trying to get them to use it is a Herculean task by itself. So that's where I felt like there was this real gap in addressing parents' need of not only highly effective products that are steeped in natural based remedies as much as
mhm.
possible, with the idea that we have to make the product work not only effectively, but work for the parents, make their life easier. Really want to help children learn to love the skin they're in. And in order to do that, you want to make product that children actually want to use itself. So that's where the inception of like what EmBeba came out to be, is that we just really believe in a mission of helping children, particularly my own children, who, from an infant all the way up, is to be able to use the product, to be able to communicate, and how like to communicate and own ownership of the product. So
Sure.
for example, I don't want to go to that product, but our product use psychology as well as toy design theory for children. So
Okay.
children as young as like 15 months, 16 months can independently use our product, no problem. And
Wow.
since they're an infant, they are able, like they see their parents using it, so they associate relief with our product. And
Mhm.
it's the way we designed it too, that then when they feel like they need the relief, they will either point to the product or use it themselves, which gives you that positive association we want, and that they actually would actually ask for the product. I think that's a big difference, is that you want that positive association. If what you think about how we grew up, right? We would run away if our parents tried to slather any type of medicine on us or stuff.
Yes.
And you don't really, and then you just have such a negative kind of negative association with like rashes thing, because you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. It's gonna burn, it's gonna sting, and all these things.
Yeah.
And we want to get away from that, because we think gentle parenting and really helping children, particularly children with skin issues, really learn to love the skin they're in and really own it and
Yeah.
manage it properly.
So you've gone basically through the process of adoption, because that's one of the things
Hmm.
in healthcare is low utilization of whatever treatment
Hmm.
it is, right? That's why you end up with readmittances, and you end
Yep.
up with all of those. I benefited at one point being part of a group that was it introduced me to a woman named Gail Lindsay, and I call her out
Hmm.
on LinkedIn all the time. And that is because Kaiser Permanente had started a preventative population care management. They were the gold standard because they
Yeah.
started it like 2000, like early, I don't even remember which day. And some of it was probably beneficial, but one of it, and obviously being a payer and a provider at the same time, you could see that it would help save to create more treatment and all that. But on the other side, when you had people who would adopt, you would have better quality of life, right?
Yeah.
And so it was how do you get people to adopt something that will make their life better and associate it with something good, right? And you've just done that. And children in those formative ages, they're learning, if I put my hand on the stove and it's hot, it hurts, right?
Yeah.
If I, those, all those triggers. So that how you've tied that whole psychological adoption, the whole, I don't know, I wish I act like I'm smarter than I am, right? So but at the end of the day, that's so smart, because the emotion draws us to keep going, right? And adopt a behavior. And sometimes we just never adopt a behavior because it's either too hard or it hurts, or, it goes back to your original thesis, just start, or, try it, go ahead.
And for us, we have a parent panel, testing panel that inform us of like, is it, from behavior standpoint, what's the troubling things for them? I think the biggest thing is also when you producing any type of products or services, you don't want to make people jump through hoops to adopt it.
Make it easy.
Make it easy. So like for us, we didn't ask the parents or the child to change their behaviors. What we didn't enforce them to like, go out the way to change the behavior. So from a diapering experience, you're still using a product on the diapering area as part of your everyday routine. What we did was just made it easier for them, because our diapering product is mess-free. It's a 2 push-up sustainable, and you swipe it in and go. The parents, they just shave themselves time. It's not like they stop diapering the kid. It's just they diaper the kid smarter. And that's really what it is. So like, as long as you don't change you don't forcibly make someone change the behavior, but you subtly make them change the behavior, that is when that's what makes product succeed.
Exactly. So that is, I love that, because it brings up challenges that I had with when I was raising my kids. I had a daughter who is now older, and I'm an empty nester. And I remember the challenges we had with diapering at that time, right? And she would literally, I had to literally go to cloth diapers 100% in a time where everybody was doing disposable diapers, right?
Yeah.
And all the laundering and all the issues. Why? Because that daughter would scream and cry because her skin burned, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was just this awful thing. And as a parent, you're like, oh, I don't want them to cry. So you'll do anything, but you're talking, I mean, to make it stop, right? But you're talking about even little tiny children adopting this so that you don't have to wait till they scream and cry or do anything and force it, right? I love it. Absolutely love it. So you really are solving some kind of challenge. You're making it easy on everybody, not just the child, but everybody for adoption. So yeah, that's like product development 101, right? That's the way to go.
Well, you'd be surprised. A lot of products out there, they're made they're made to check off the list of the buyers. And a lot of time the buyers are the users, right? When they're older. But like a lot of the companies don't do well, and that's where the white space for us, and where we hone in, is that in the early informative year, from infant to like 15, 16 years old, the users are not the buyer. So you have this like 2-prong approach you need to take. And it just goes back to, you got to know your customers. You got to know who you're making the product for, and making sure that you're actually solving a problem.
Yes, exactly. So you went through that whole cycle of it. So this has been very, very exciting to learn about EmBeba, because it was something that wasn't on my radar, partially because it's not, when my grandkids come, maybe it will show back up on my demographic, right? But it wasn't part of what I was doing. And I think it's super exciting for any any rounds that are coming. Super exciting for entrepreneurs to learn how you've done it. And then just super excited in this dialogue about, I mean, just this psychology of starting, like trying something and solving a challenge to boot at the same time. Yeah, you may not win all of them. And you mentioned that so a lot of times I will ask on this show kind of, well, what would you tell your older wise yourself? You've got this great thing, it's launching, if things are going well for you. What would you tell your younger, wiser self to do?
I think
I mean, your younger
this...
self, your older, wiser self to your younger self. Sorry.
I would say start earlier. Like, I don't know. And this is part of like, when you're in a very comfortable position and things, it's hard. It actually gets harder and harder to get out of it. I think that's why I always encourage younger folks to start the company, to start taking that leap and to start whatever they want to do, just start in their 20s, because the higher you grow, and then you have obligation, you have families and all these things, it gets harder and harder to take that leap.
Yeah.
So for me, I would say that, but it all like coincide, because this company was born out of the fact that it was for my children. So sure. I probably wouldn't start this company earlier if I don't have children, because I wouldn't know what the company would be about. But at the same time, I would just say, like, try to start a lot earlier, and take more risk. Like, take a lot more risk.
Yeah.
I think even with building the company, I just did not take as much risk as a lot of other folks, because I had a certain way I wanted to do things.
Well, that's good advice. That I kind of tell people, suspend no until you've actually explored, right? And see
yes.
Just take a moment. And, it's Jim Carrey's Yes Man. I always use that as an example. His movie, as a yes man, and all these amazing things happened because he said yes. And then he had to dial it back. It
actually does, because it's like you just never know, right? So you always have to continue on, and then something will always happen to your, like, that you're always going to end up being very surprised about. But it also just takes you from just taking that, I said, leap of faith, like starting. It's not even just starting, it's just continues to do things every single step of the way. Starting is hard, continuing to do it's even harder. But I think that mentality of like, just say yes to everything, just start, just like, in the beginning, it actually makes sense to say, well, once, and then you have to say no sometime, because otherwise it's too much. But never say no right away. Say a maybe.
A maybe. Suspend no for just a moment.
Exactly. I like that. No. I like that. Yeah.
So, okay. A lot, we've talked business, we've talked best practices, we've gone through a lot in this episode. And so a lot of them are curious about just Thai-Anh. What is she like in her personal life? You just got back from a family vacation that you were like, I had to have some wine, I had to all this other stuff. What do you like to do in your free time?
Actually, I'm like, my husband always makes fun of me, because he thinks I'm like a 70-year-old person in like a 40-year-old. Because I'm like, I really like to do old people stuff. So I'm actually quite introverted. So people always very surprised by that when they meet me, is that how introverted I am. I'm extroverted when I like in business setting, but that exhausts me. And then when I'm like introverted most of my life. But what I really liked is, I'm very family centric. So for me, and I come from a very large family of relatives and clan. And I love gardening.
Okay.
Actually, I picked up gardening because I was very stressed out, and my doctor recommended I like do yoga, and I'm like, I can't even sit through 1 minute, like 30 seconds or something without fidgeting. I'm like, this is not gonna work. Like I cannot do yoga. And they're like, why don't you try gardening? So yeah, I picked up gardening because to help with stress management, and I just really love it because I feel like it's very similar to starting anything. You have to start. There's a lot of trial and error. I probably killed a lot more plants than I want to. But then when it works, you're like, oh, but it takes such a long time to build something, and gardening is virtually the same. And you realize that things just takes time to do it. Yeah, and I like to cook if I can. Yeah, I'm kind of boring. I'm sorry, guys. I'm really a boring person.
No. I mean,
but yeah.
nothing's boring. It's an interest, it's what you do. And, there's nothing better than homegrown tomatoes and, any kind of vegetable garden. Heck, yeah, no, that's a great skill to have.
Yeah, I share this bond with my 80-year-old father. We're both gardeners.
Well, and then it gives you guys something to do together as family, right?
Yeah, well, he doesn't live in Massachusetts with us, but like he would text me photos of his like ginormous pumpkin and stuff, and I'm like, what are you doing that I'm not doing right about my thing? Yeah, so it's nice.
What's your secret sauce?
Yeah, it's like just getting closer to nature. I think like it just, being close to nature, like going closer to the food source and all these things is actually a really good. I think we're so stuck inside and like everything is so electronic. We kind of like lost touch with nature. And so I always think that the more time you spend outside, the better. And actually the one of the other reason I started gardening is because I like wanted my children to really enjoy like learning about like picking fruits and vegetables, and have a really, again, this kind of psychology behind it is to have them get a very positive association with food, with natural food, and like loving a tomato and things like that, which you not normally wouldn't if you just go to a grocery store.
Oh, well, it sounds all very fascinating, and the listeners have really enjoyed probably listening to you. And honestly, I'm so grateful that you agreed to come on this show and talk about best practices and how you got to where you are today. They would love to know, where is one place that's the best place to get a hold of you if they would love to talk to you, invest, whatever you're wanting?
Definitely LinkedIn. You just like find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect with people, and it's always funny. It's like I love having chats with the people, so particularly entrepreneurs who are just starting out. I want to give back because I remember when I started out, I was talking to some like really big name who I couldn't believe like was agreed to talk to me in the industry. And I was like, oh my God, it was amazing. This door just opened. So I definitely always want to do that, is just to help the next generation of like entrepreneurs.
Well, that's awesome. Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening. This has been another great episode on the Revenue Maze. And I just am grateful for the listeners. If you like this, share it, love it, do whatever you want to do with it. But let Thai-Anh also know that you liked it and loved it and everything else, and certainly reach out. And again, thank you so much, Thai-Anh, for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I truly enjoyed this.
Thank you all for joining another great episode. For show notes, links, and resources, visit revenuemaze.com. Hats off to all you small businesses out there. I can't wait for the next episode.